two session. We already have session on the introduction to R, the first one, and the second one on the regression. So hopefully you already have some knowledge on those topics. And for today, we will start with our introduction to small area estimation. Hanik, would you like to have a good group picture first before I pass on to our colleagues from PSM, Ms. Dri?
Maybe we can do it later in the end of the session, yeah, because I'm sure many participants are still coming in.
Okay then. No. I think there is nothing else from me. So I will pass on to Ms. Trish from PSA.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Am I clear? Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank you, Hanik. Hello, good morning, Ms. Warda and Hanik. I will be representing the Philippine Statistics Authority in behalf of my Chief Supervisor, Ms. Bernadette Balamban. I will be presenting the introduction to we have decided to do the presentation by first presenting the introduction to small area estimates, and then tomorrow we will um, show or present the comparison of the direct and indirect estimation using actual data that the PSA has been using. So the presentation today, please, may I share my presentation?
Please.
Okay. Share. Is it already in your screens? Okay. So can you see? Okay. So the presentation today will be the exercise will be conducted for our session tomorrow, and today we will only cover the introduction to small area estimation and the efforts of the Philippines or the Philippine Statistics Authority in conducting small area estimation, specifically for poverty statistics. So to start with my presentation, I will be presenting the background, the small area estimation methodology or the basic concepts of the small area estimation, and the small area estimation being conducted in the Philippines by the Philippine Statistics Authority, and the other small area estimation study that the PSA has conducted for our division, the Poverty and Human Development Statistics, and the actual policy uses that the PSA was able to consolidate from other line agencies within the Philippines. So to proceed, what is the motivation of using small area estimation? So small area estimation is being conducted as a set of methods used mostly by national statistics offices and other organizations to achieve acceptable estimates disaggregated into smaller population subgroups. So the idea of small area estimation came up because there are advantages and disadvantages in conducting household surveys versus the population censuses. And for evidence-based policies and programs, we need specific data sets to be able to implement programs for our countries. So, for example, for the household survey, we collect detailed information on multiple indicators of well-being, such as income, and this is very costly. But the detail of information that we get from household surveys is very relevant and very important for our policymakers. However, the disadvantage for conducting the household survey is that the samples are too small to be representative for small subnational units, and surveys do not cover all the primary sampling units. While the population censuses provide 100% coverage, permitting assessment for small areas, however, they have very limited information on poverty and social exclusion indicators. So this is where the intersection of the disadvantage and advantages of the household surveys and population censuses, this is where the small area estimation comes into place. So the motivation of using small area estimation is, as I've mentioned, is to provide statistics needed by the government as well as by the private sector in policy formulation, formulation of solutions, monitoring purposes, and impact assessment of programs. And for most of the countries, they have usually reference the poverty estimation or the proportion of poor persons or the being while being poor implies that the per capita income is less than the poverty threshold. So most of the small area efforts or small area estimation efforts being conducted by many countries, they usually refer to the indicator of welfare, or for other countries, they such as the Philippines, we refer to the small area estimation in estimating for the poor at the small area levels. So for context, we define poor as those that have income below the poverty threshold. And the poverty threshold is varies from country to country. Some refer to relative threshold, while others refer to the absolute poverty threshold, or the previously $1.25 being used by the World Bank. So there are ways to obtain subnational poverty statistics. So first, we design nationwide survey with smaller domain of estimation. We conduct data collection at the small domain, and we use nationwide survey data. However, we may able to do this, um, but it will be very costly and time consuming for agencies to conduct subnational poverty statistics with very detailed or very long survey questionnaires. So as you can see, we may have for at the provincial poverty incidence in 2012, because this is one of the pivotal results presented by the then National Statistical Coordination Board of the Philippines to advocate for small area estimates. They were able to advocate to the policymakers that our survey can only do this at this level of precision, based on our provincial poverty incidence. So this is not the small area level. So, but our survey cannot we cannot compute at the lower level because it will be very costly and time consuming. So that's why they use the statistics to leverage for the conduct of small area estimation as a motivation of conducting SAE in the Philippines. So as you can see, the coefficient of variation of the poverty incidence in the Philippines then in 2012, they have very high poverty incidence, ranging from 9% up to the highest, which is the 50% coefficient of variation. And we know that as a rule of thumb, the acceptable coefficient of variation should be lower than 10%. So with a small area estimation, they were able to illustrate the importance of considering other methodologies such as small area estimation. So as you can see, based on the provincial estimates or on a larger geographic domain of the Philippines, the island in the circle is being generalized to be highly poor, or to have high poverty incidence. While if you were able to go down at the small area level, you can see that not all the cities in that province or in that domain is considered as poor. So the policymakers will be able to identify or prioritize areas with higher poverty incidence using the small area estimation techniques. So That's why we came up with alternative ways to obtain subnational poverty statistics, and specifically the use of small area estimation techniques. So, for the small area estimation techniques, we have synthetic or indirect estimation technique, the model based approach, or a combination of the two techniques. So some may be familiar of these techniques. And what is the criteria that we consider as a small area? So it can either be a small geographical division or a small domain. And what is a domain? So a domain is a subpopulation of the target universe, which can be classified according to types as in planned, cross classes and in between, or size as in major, minor, mini, and rare types of individuals. So when we refer to the domain and area, we are not only referring to the geographical division of a country or of of a region. So we can also consider other groupings of or other subpopulation groups. So further on the some applications of small area estimation, Fay and Harriet estimate per capita income of states in 1979 and local government units. So the per capita income or the PCI is used for allocation of funds under the General Revenue Sharing Program. So the problem that they encountered, there are large discrepancies between census estimate and county estimates. So their solution was to use an empirical based method, which is a weighted average of the census estimate and a synthetic estimate. So the as you can see, the weight that was used is a complement for the census and the synthetic estimate. So the per capita income was predicted using the weighted sum of the census per capita income and the synthetic per capita income, synthetic estimate. So this is one of the approaches in using small area estimates. So also Erickson and Kadane in 1985 estimate population undercount of states and large cities. So, and also the proposed estimates of the adjusted population count of the 50 states and 16 large cities use a weighted average of sample estimates and synthetic estimates similarly obtained as those of Fay and Harriet. So, as I've mentioned, small area estimation is not only for specifically for poverty estimates or employment estimates. It can also be used for other indicators such as population counts, estimation of per capita income, and much more. So another application of small area estimation by Batiste, Harter, and Fuller in 1988, they estimated an area under corn and soybean for each of the 12 counties in north central Iowa using farm interview data in conjunction with the Landsat satellite data. So I believe some of you are already familiar with there are already efforts in using satellite images in even estimating poverty. So before it was only before in 1988 there were already efforts to use the satellite data. So each county was divided into area segments. Farm operators of sample area segments were interviewed to ascertain the areas planted with corn and soybean, and the number of sample segments in a country ranged from 1 to 6, and the auxiliary data in the form of number of pixels classified as corn and soybean areas for sampled and non-sampled area segments were used in estimation procedure using the E-bloop approach. So maybe we can further discuss eBloop tomorrow as we do our exercise for the indirect estimation approach of SAE. So in the Philippines, we have applications in the in the following fields. We were able to estimate for agriculture production, employment, poverty, education and literacy, nutrition, disease incidence, and health statistics. Of course, we have to first evaluate the data that we have, and we should be able to identify the appropriate small area estimation technique that will be useful and that will be relevant for certain fields that we would like to apply small area estimation. And further, when conducting small area estimation, we consider statistical properties to evaluate our estimates. So first, we should measure the precision, measure the accuracy, and measure the reliability of the statistics that we generate using the small area estimation approach. So first, we have the measure of precision. This measures the closeness of the estimates from each other. They are usually measured by the variance of the estimator. And another measure is the square root of the variance of the estimator, known as the standard error of the estimate. And the smaller the value of the measure, the more precise the estimate is. So when we estimate for small area statistics, we should make sure that the value of the measures of precision should be lower. And so this is one of our deciding factors when we are considering if small area estimation is actually significant for our policies or the data that we need. So also we make sure of the accuracy of our data. We measures the closeness of the estimates to the parameter of interest. So usually measured by the bias of the estimator, and the smaller the absolute value of the measure, the more accurate the estimate is. So a bias which is less than zero implies that the estimate underestimates the parameter. Likewise, a positive bias implies overestimation. So our goal with measuring the accuracy is that the bias should be as close as possible to zero. While the measure of reliability gives a relative measure of variability, so usually measured by the coefficient of variation of the estimate, and the smaller the value of the measure, the more reliable the estimate is. So a rough rule of thumb says that the coefficient must be at most 10% for the estimate to be considered as reliable. However, based on our previous discussions, I believe not all countries adopt the 10% rule of thumb. It ultimately depends on your agency, on how you will be able, how is your usual practice, or it usually depends on the advice of your agency or colleagues on the rule of thumb in obtaining getting the cutoff in the measures of the coefficient of variations of the estimates. So for the Philippines, we use the at most 10% for our estimates um, based on our surveys that we release. So further, aside from conducting those measures of reliability, accuracy, and precision, we also conduct external validation. We make sure that the estimates we generate are reasonably accurate, and they can be, if ever they deviate, they should be explained by some theorems, and they should be expected by experts, or in general the estimate that you generate should agree with previous study being conducted on the sectors of your interest. So for example, for the Philippines, we usually, when we generate the small area estimates, um, when we already have the estimate, we check the um percent change or the growth, and then we revisit areas with um, sudden increases, jumps, or dips in their results from the previous years of estimation. Then we further inquire on specific areas that have big jumps in their results. So those are one of the validation exercises that we can conduct to make sure that the estimates that we generate are reasonable and can be accepted by policymakers. So there are some small area estimation techniques that have been introduced in the academe or even in our previous I think we have I think some were able to attend the capacity building activity led by the Asian Development Bank. And if you are familiar with their um, published guidelines, there are techniques available for direct estimation or the direct method, traditional indirect methods such as demographic methods, synthetic methods, composite methods, and even for model-based methods such as E-bloop method, empirical-based method, hierarchical-based method, and ELL methodology. So for the Philippines, officially the PSA releases small area poverty using the ELL methodology, but we were also able to conduct other studies on small area estimation using eBloop and the direct estimation to compare and even other model-based approaches such as Poisson estimation. And recently, there are already efforts to further compute for the SAE for the art for the small area estimation using machine learning techniques or machine learning tools. But still, the basis of their methodology is still based on the traditional, indirect, direct method or the model-based approaches in um, estimating small area estimates. So, um, if you have any questions, please feel free to uh, raise your inquiry, or maybe you can raise your inquiries after the presentation. Either way is okay. So for the second part, since the Philippines has been conducting small area estimation of poverty, this is our way of sharing the efforts of the PSA or the Philippines in estimating small area estimates of poverty in the Philippines. So the previous part is the background or the introduction to small area, and this is the um, applications and other actual policy uses of small area for the Philippines, which some countries may you may be able to evaluate if the efforts that the Philippines has been conducting is applicable to your country. So you can also evaluate the data that we have used, if it is available in your country and if it is within the interest of your organization. So for the small area estimations of poverty in the Philippines, these are the motivations of using small area estimation in the Philippines. So we need small area estimates in the Philippines because there is a clamor for granular data in monitoring programs and targeting beneficiaries of various stakeholders, such as national government agencies and local government units. So since the early 2000s, there were already requests from the local government units to generate official poverty statistics at the local levels. So, and recently, when the Sustainable Development Goals was crafted in 2015, the Philippines also made an effort to monitor at the local level or the small area level, and for the Philippine development plan, there are also efforts to localize the development plan of the Philippines, thus the need for further disaggregated data in the Philippines. So the estimation of poverty incidence in the Philippines is being conducted at the city and municipal level, which is a part of the output of the project on the generation of small area estimates of poverty. So the effort of the generation of small area estimates of poverty was initiated by the National Statistical Coordination Board, which is now part of the PSA, through the technical assistance of World Bank. While the succeeding exercises were conducted in partnership with the international organizations with the support from the Philippine government. So, starting in the estimation of the 2012 small area estimates of poverty, the financial support is already 100% coming from the Philippine government. So the methodology being used by the PSA is based on the Elbers-Lanyao and Lanyao methodology developed by World Bank. So the main idea of the methodology is to merge information from different types of data sources to come up with small area estimates of poverty. So the idea is to borrow strength from a much more detailed coverage of the census data to supplement the direct measures of the survey. As what I've mentioned earlier, this is the merging of the advantages and disadvantages of the conduct of household surveys and censuses. So, using the household survey data to estimate a model of the per capita income, the functional variables that are common to both the household survey and the censuses are the main considerations when conducting the ELL methodology. So this is a statistical model wherein we predict the income or the per capita income of the households in the census, since we have limited data on income from the survey from the conduct of the surveys. So using the resulting estimated equation or model to predict the per capita income for each household in the census. So based on the statistical model, we then generate unbiased estimates and standard errors of poverty incidence, poverty gap, and severity of poverty for small areas such as cities and municipalities are then generated by using the bootstrap procedure. So this procedure is being conducted using previously a PovMap software generated by World Bank, but now we are using a statistical package in Stata, also developed by the team of experts from the World Bank. So the regression model being referred in the ELL methodology is presented, and wherein the y sub ij is the target variable or the per capita income, and this is log transformed to make the distribution more symmetrical, because as most of us are familiar with the distribution of income, the distribution of income is skewed for especially I'm not sure for other countries, but for the Philippines, I'm sure that the distribution of income is skewed. So we have to transform um the variable for it to mention, this is an area level model-based approach, wherein there are two error terms common at the area level by the household level error and the error at the cluster level, which is the area level approach, which refers to the area level approach. So this is the methodology developed by the World Bank. So the how we conduct the small area estimation in the Philippines is, first we conduct data preparation by checking the definitions of variables being used by the census and the versus the surveys, and we make sure that the values and labels were checked for consistency, since the conduct of the survey, especially for reference periods wherein the conduct of the survey is not in the same year with the conduct of the census. So we must make sure that even the distribution of so for example, for the Philippines, the latest release was for the 2021 city and municipal level. we used the 2021 Family Income and Expenditure Survey, the 2022 January Labor Force Survey, and the 2020 Census of Population and Housing, and the 2021 updating of the list of establishments. And we also we started utilizing the nighttime lights data, since there are studies that suggest that nighttime lights are good indicators of economic activities, wherein economic activities are highly correlated with poverty statistics or poverty incidences at the area level. So once we evaluate the available data and their consistency, and once we check that they are consistent, we now have household variables, variables from the barangay level, or this is the cluster level variables. And then we also have averages at the municipal or city level for other administrative data that we wish to consider when we do our model-based approach, or when we do our um, estimation. So once we have the predictors of the model, we then conduct the model building by region, because the Philippines have 17 region. And um for um for our for the Philippines, most regions do not have same characteristics, or the same economic activities, or their demographic characteristics are not usually the same. So for the Philippines, it was recommended to generate or create a model for each region, wherein there are regions that have far more economic um, activities, while there are regions that are still dependent on their agriculture industry. So that's why we have different models for each region. So once the we are already in our model building, we conduct model evaluation or model selection to predict the best model. And for the criteria of predicting the best model, we should consider as I've mentioned earlier, the measures of accuracy, measures of reliability, and the measures of precision, as well as the evaluation of other external considerations in the model-based approach. Wherein for the Philippines, since we have official data on at the provincial and regional level, once we have the estimates from the model, we compare them with the official releases, while making sure that the estimates generated from the model does not differ does not differ largely from the official releases of the PSA. However, we only release the statistics at the small area level, as to not confuse the policymakers, or to not duplicate the official releases. That's why we only present the small area levels, even if the methodology can generate up to the national estimate of poverty. So once we have the best predicting model, we can now do the indirect estimation of poverty statistics, wherein the predicted income for each household will then be compared to the poverty threshold for that specific region. And once the family, based on the census, will be tagged as, once they have the predicted income, they will be tagged as either poor or non-poor based on the official poverty threshold. And those families or households that will be tagged as poor will now be part of the poverty incidence of the small area estimates, which was the main objective of the methodology. So once we have the indirect estimates of poverty statistics, we conduct validation exercises and dissemination of estimates. So just to share the progress or the development of the methodology across years in the Philippines. So the initial effort was started in 2005, wherein the Philippines was able to conduct poverty mapping using the 2000 Census of Population and Housing, using the 2000 Family Income and Expenditure Survey, merged with the labor force survey. And this is all funded by World Bank then, also with their technical assistance. And when they decided to estimate for the 2003 city and municipal level, the methodology was modified to be able to come up with time invariant variables, since the conduct of the census is not at the same reference period with the conduct of the survey. So they were able to
I think some technical problem.
apologies, was I disconnected? Hello?
Miss Grace? Okay,
Yes?
we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Please go
So
on.
na, okay, to proceed. I hope this is still the correct slide when I got disconnected.
There is no slide. Maybe you can reshare.
Okay. Is this the same slide when I got disconnected?
I think so.
Or okay. So okay, further, apologies for the disconnection. For the Philippines, again, to the Philippines was able to continue the generation of small area estimates of poverty in 2014 with the full support from the government of the Philippines. So we were able to continue the generation of poverty statistics until now. And our recent release is 2021 municipal and city level poverty estimates, which was, apologies, I was not able to include it in this slide, but we were able to release it this year for the 2021 city and municipal level poverty estimates. Of course, with 100% support from the government of the Philippines, because as mentioned earlier, the government, the then NSCB, or the National Statistical Coordination Board, was able to advocate the importance of small area level poverty statistics at the House of Congress. That's why they were able to approve the budget in conducting the methodology. And now, since starting in the generation of the 2018 city and municipal level poverty estimates, the PSA was able to um, use the nighttime lights. Apologies. We started using the nighttime lights in the release of the 2015 city and municipal level poverty estimates. So it has been updated. It has been used since the 2018, 2021, and the most recent 20, yes. And for the 2021 small area estimation that was conducted last year, the Philippines, or the PSA, was already able to use the statistical package developed by the World Bank in Stata, because it is much more convenience for us, because we have been using Stata, and the POV map developed by the World Bank is already obsolete, and they were no longer updating the software itself. So they already migrated to developing statistical packages. And I believe for the aside there are, since ELL is only one of the methodology in small area estimation, many other small area estimation techniques are also available for in R. So Fay Heriot, the eBloop, those are all available in R. So what we are considering is that maybe tomorrow during the exercise or the hands-on exercise, we may able to just utilize R instead of Stata because the capacity building on Stata may not be convenient because our our license on Stata is only limited for a few users. So we decided to just use the available methodologies in R instead of the ELL methodology. But we will also be sharing the ELL methodology for the following on how we do it in Stata for the next capacity building schedule. But for tomorrow, we will do our best to do it in R. So hopefully it's okay with everyone. So the latest release of whenever we release poverty estimates, we usually also present it in chromatic maps or heat maps to be able to help policymakers appreciate the data that we release. I know that there are many more advanced ways or interactive dashboards to present statistical results, but for a quick snapshot of our releases at the small area estimates, you can see already the areas or the small areas to prioritize, which is much more convenient for policymakers and program implementers to identify areas that mm, still need more poverty alleviation programs. So that is the main goal of our project on small area estimation of poverty. So on the recent developments in small area of poverty, since the Philippines is or the PSA has referred to the methodology of the World Bank. The World Bank also prepared or was able to publish a practical guide to enable practitioners working on small area estimation of poverty to make informed choices between the available methods and make them aware of the strengths and limitations of the methodologies at hand. Also, for practitioners who wish to learn about the updates on the SAE package and the Stata software, since discontinuing the use of the PovMap software. Also, exploration of various machine learning approaches such as gradient boosting and ridge regression in generating essay of poverty is already in the guidelines, and I believe there are many more updates that is currently being conducted by World Bank, specifically on the machine learning approaches in small area estimation of poverty. While we have been generating small area estimation of poverty, um, to be able to because our the management of the Philippine Statistics Authority wanted to have the small area estimation methodology to be approved by the board or should be an official release, because as of now we release the small area estimate still as a project. um, we have the whenever we release the result, we refer to a caveat that this is not an official release. While this is being released by PSA, please be cautious that there are still many more studies to be considered or to be explored for the small area estimation, but we release them nonetheless because of the clamor, and we are assured that the methodology can generate accurate, reliable, and precise estimates. So to consider the other small area estimation techniques, our team was able to generate small area estimation of underemployment using the eBloop approach. So this is before the Philippines was generating employment indicators at the provincial level. So provincial level is a geographical domain just above the city and municipal level. So we wanted to generate city and municipal level estimates for a region, for a certain region in the Philippines. And we highlighted this region because for the past few releases, this region in the when we conducted in 2015, this region consistently had the highest rate of underemployment. So we only have the regional estimate. And we wanted to check which areas or cities or municipalities in the region were causing the high underemployment rate in that certain area. So using the empirical based linear unbiased prediction while integrating geospatial information into the model, we generate the um, city and municipal level underemployment estimates for that region. And this is, of course, aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 8, decent work, economic growth, that promotes sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. So, since underemployment is one of the key employment indicators wherein we will be able to see inequality among income levels, weak employment generation, or unmanaged population growth. So the result of the study was that the number of reliable and acceptable estimates increased from 35 to 78 out of the 114 cities and municipalities from generating the IBLUP estimates in comparison to the direct estimates. And 54.55% of the coefficient of variation obtained from direct estimation were of greater than 20%. So they are less reliable, implying that the obtained estimates from the direct estimation were mostly unreliable, while 68.43% of the coefficient of variation obtained from the e-bloop technique were less than 20%, implying that the estimates obtained were mostly reliable when using the model-based approach. So for this, we were able to conclude that direct estimation and model-based estimation had almost 70% of the generated municipal and city level estimates have acceptable measures of reliability when using the e-bloop approach. While underemployment, we also consider the Moran's I because we wanted to check if it was caused by some other factors wherein, but we found out during the study that the underemployment is not specially affected for that region by its neighbors, which was concluded from computing the Moran's I estimate. And it was discovered that the generated models using ELL have no predicting power in generating underemployment estimates since the average of the generated adjusted R scores were below 10%. Although ELL is we found out in the study that although ELL is very effective in poverty estimation when computing for unemployment rates or other indicators aside from poverty, we were able to conclude based on the study for this region that e-bloop is a better technique when estimating underemployment versus the use of the ELL methodology. And further studies may be done to identify strong correlates of underemployment since underemployment is not a usual consideration in estimating small area estimates or not a usual indicator or a predicting indicator when estimating small area estimates. So further, we also was able to conduct small area estimation of poverty using Poisson regression model. So we decided to explore the use of Poisson regression model because there was a clamor to generate district level counts of poor um, for the National Capital Region because the National Capital Region in the Philippines have very low poverty incidence because our poverty incidence is income based. So when we compute for the poverty, we usually refer to the income data. So when we generate for the income data, um, we know that households inside the capital areas usually have higher income compared to households residing in rural areas. So it may be considered as a rare occurrence, which that's why we have considered Poisson regression for the estimation of district level for the National Capital Region, because National Capital Region is also one of the regions with the highest population count. So we need to go down lower than the city and municipal level. So for each city in the National Capital Region, we have at least um, two district levels. So for the Congress or the policymakers, they wanted to know the poverty estimates at the district level or at within their constituents. So that's why we used to analyze the count data because for policymakers, may I just share that you should also evaluate whether you need proportion, ratio, or count when estimating for poverty statistics, because when we estimate poverty incidences, we only get the rate. We don't get the magnitude of the poor. So for policymakers to have a poverty alleviation program, for it to have a higher magnitude or bigger impact, there should be higher number of people being supported or addressed by the program. So when we go to urban areas, specifically the National Capital Region of the Philippines, the population is very dense. So even if the poverty incidence or the rate or ratio is small, the number of people um, under that incidence is higher compared to the number of poor in rural areas. So when we did the Poisson regression, the concern is on the count rather than the incidence or the ratio. So since Poisson is a discrete distribution, so we were able to generate the we were able to generate the number of poor using Poisson regression, and it is assumed to follow a Poisson distribution. And since the income are positively skewed, such as income-based poverty incidence in highly urbanized cities in the Philippines. So the PSA has initiated efforts in generating, as mentioned earlier, in generating small area estimates of poverty using the ELL methodology. However, it was deemed to be a challenge for in generating sufficient model for the National Capital Region using only the ELL methodology. Thus, there has been other efforts to conduct other study to generate ELL, to generate small area estimates or SAE estimates for the National Capital Region. And there has been persistent clamor to generate poverty statistics at the legislative district level. So the results of the study is that in the Poisson model approach, all estimates have coefficient of variation below 20%, which are deemed as reliable. Meanwhile, the ELL approach obtained more than 50% of estimates with CVs greater than 20, which is considered as unreliable. So since we have the release for the ELL, and when we generated the ELL based on our usual conduct of SAE, the National Capital Region was one of the regions that did not generate a result uh, with higher levels of reliability compared to the other regions in the Philippines. So for the conclusion, the Poisson model approach may be more appropriate model for the National Capital Region, given it generated estimates more reliable than using the ELL methodology, and it was also able to have a more adequate model considering it had a higher adjusted R square or a higher R square, leading to have a better predicting power in generating poverty estimates. And this serves as a computational and however, this only serves as a computational exercise given that the PSA currently does not have a does not have an official methodology for small area estimations of poverty. And the Poisson model-based approach may also be considered for other regions given that it had a better predicting measure than the ELL methodology. So, um, as of now, we are still in the process of identifying other measures that we can compare with the ELL. So once we propose for the inclusion of small area estimations as official poverty statistics of the Philippines, we can vouch that the ELL methodology or any other small area estimation methodology is the most appropriate methodology when generating for certain indicators that of our interests. So hopefully we will be able to have it approved as soon as possible. So for the actual policy uses of subnational poverty statistics, um, may we share that the PSA has been providing small area estimates of poverty for the policy formulation, planning, and monitoring for the Department of Social Welfare and Development, wherein they are using our statistics for monitoring of poverty reduction programs. And for the some municipalities in the Philippines, wherein they also use um, the small area estimates of poverty for the development of municipal economic profile and local planning in the area for the local government units. Poverty estimates serving as basis for formulating poverty reduction programs in the area, and also for other provincial government levels or provincial government units, because they also have to develop their own provincial economic profile for their own poverty reduction efforts. So, and also the use of small area estimates of poverty in the assessment of progress of municipalities or cities in the implementation of poverty reduction programs by the provincial government units. Further, the National Economic Development Authority or the NEDA and the Regional Development Council of one of the regions in the Philippines use small area estimation in preparing profile and situationers of certain areas to master the planning activity and in the presentation and analysis of regions' poverty and macroeconomy situationer. The small area estimate is used in identifying areas needing poverty reduction programs. And these are only some of the examples, but many other local government units have consistently or constantly reached out to our team to request for small area estimates for their situationers, economic profiles, and monitoring of poverty reduction programs. So further, the small area estimation of poverty is also being used in targeting beneficiaries of poverty alleviation programs and other social security projects of the Philippines. So for the Department of Energy, the small area estimation estimates of poverty is also used to for the lifeline rate for electricity bill subsidies. So this project by the government is to identify households or small area levels or small areas that in need of the um, uh, for example, a certain poor or small area is classified as poor, so they may automatically be considered under the program given the economic situation of certain areas identified using the small area estimation of poverty. Also, for the conditional cash transfer conducted by the Department of Social Welfare and Development. They also use the small area estimates of poverty to identify pockets of poverty in certain provinces or regions in the Philippines. And they use it as a guide to prioritize areas for the National Household Targeting System operations of the Department of Social Welfare and Development. Meanwhile, the Department of Agriculture um, used this as basis to determine recipients of the projects on sustainable agriculture upland development projects to identify pilot communities in order to address the upland community's need for nutritious and healthy food by building the capability of people in implementing upland agricultural and forest development programs. Because as I've mentioned earlier, some regions in the Philippines are still very dependent on their agriculture industry. That's why some of the predictors, when we do the model, are mostly agri-related because the agricultural activities of a certain region usually best predict or better predict the income of the households on that agriculture dependent region. So it is useful for the Department of Agriculture also to determine the top priority local government units in certain regions as recipient of the Philippine Rural Development Projects funded by World Bank in partnership with other local government units and some private sector groups. Also for the UN World Food Program of the Department of Social Welfare and Development, they were able to identify affected families of the Typhoon Haiyan before when it devastated the region of Western Visayas in the Philippines in 2013. Also, on the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, the small area estimates of poverty serve as input or reference to the Educational Assistance Program, and specifically for the computation of equitable distribution of funds for the EAP. So as what I've presented, you can see that the programs are very specific for the programs being the poverty alleviation, social protection. They are very specific. They need a specific group or they need a specific area to provide support. That's why subnational poverty statistics or small area poverty statistics is very relevant and important for government national line government agencies and even private sectors to be able to identify and optimize their programs to reach those that are actually most in need of poverty alleviation support or social protection programs. Further, for the next steps, the Philippines or the PSA will be generating the 2023 small area estimates of poverty in the third quarter of 2025 or next year because as I presented earlier on the previous slides, we need the merged family income and expenditure survey and the labor force survey data to be able to serve as predictors for the model-based approach in ELL. However, the availability of data will be in the first quarter of 2025. So further, we are encouraged to conduct further study on the other methodology of estimating small area estimates, not only for poverty estimation, as well as the agricultural sector for the economic sector of the PSA. So hopefully I was able to share or provide you with the introduction on small area estimates and able to share the initial efforts of the Philippines on small area estimation. So if you have questions, you may uh, you may now raise them, or if none, that would also be okay. So may I see some queries, or it's okay if you can also reach us via email. We can provide our email address if you are in need of further details on what I have presented. Also for tomorrow, we will try to do our for small areas for the direct and indirect estimation. So hopefully tomorrow maybe you can also raise your queries. Yes, maybe Miss Warda or Hanik. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grace, for the comprehensive brief on the Philippines experiences on the introduction to small area estimation. May we invite participants if you would like to ask a question or provide any comments or feedback or reflection from the session. You may raise your hand and directly raise your question, or you may also write your question in the chat box, please.
While waiting for participant raising their question, may I?
Please, Hani.
Yeah, Miss Grace, thank you so much for the explanation. I just wonder about the method that Philippine use. If you found the best method already, for example, the Poisson method for poverty estimate, will you use this method in the future, or still when you do estimation, you will try to find another method, which the best method?
For when we because for our case, we have the Technical Committee on Poverty Statistics. They are a group of experts. Um, they are the ones who will decide whether we will proceed with this methodology. But of course, recognizing that SAE is has various methodologies to consider. But for the government perspective, I think for the consistency of the results, I think the PSA, once it will be approved by the PSA or the PSA board, we will be using that specific methodology for future. However, even in the official poverty releases, there is a clause that we should review the official poverty estimation methodology every 10 years. So to make sure that we are still measuring the current situation, maybe we can include that clause once we have the approved or the identified best methodology to review it continuously to make sure that the methodology is still relevant, knowing that the statistical techniques across indicators or across sa industries are constantly evolving, and specifically now that we have been using machine learning techniques, AI. So I think even if we have the approved methodology or the proposed best methodology, in the future we will still be reviewing whether the proposed best methodology is still the best for the current situation. And thank you. I hope that answers your query. And I think there's a question in the chat box. Yes, we will be. I will. I will share the PowerPoint. Apologies for not sharing the materials before the prior this session. Thank you.
Hani will email to all of participants the materials for today's session. May now we invite other question, please. Other comment. If not, then before we and thank you, Miss Grace. But before we end our session today, we would like again to ask member state for the data preparation. Last time we understand that Lao already have some data prepared for the exercise using the small area estimation. Maybe we would like to hear also from other countries. on the do you need some helps on the variables that you should try to collect, or you have enough information already or enough knowledge already, which variables that you will use for the exercise? Can we hear from other countries? Anyone? Or maybe if you don't have it now and you in the process you have a question, or you need some assistance on the choosing of the variables, let us know. You can email to me or to Hani. And then if you have a question related to our sharing session today, please also later on after this session end, you may also send email through ASEAN Staff or directly to Mr. as well. We welcome. And from participants? Okay, while we're waiting, since we almost finished our session today, I will pass to Hani for the group picture. After that, we will get back to the participants for the question if you may have. Thank you.
All right, while waiting for responses from participant, let us take a picture first. May we request to all participants to open the camera and participate on the photo group session. All right, we'll wait a little bit more. I have 2 pages here. Thank you for Vietnam for opening your camera, and also from Malaysia. Please. Okay, more videos from Myanmar. Thank you. Hi, Jacob for Timor-Leste. All right, on my count, I will count until 3. Oh, more opening video. Okay. All right, I will start to count. In 1, 2, 3, please give your best smile. Let me take one more. All right, more camera open. Okay, on my count again. 1, 2, 3, please smile. Okay, may I take one more? There's more camera opening now. Okay, on my count again. 1, 2, 3, please smile. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Hani. So, one last question. Do you have any question or comment on the presentation by Miss Drish or on the data preparation? May I check with Myanmar colleagues? Do you have any data already prepared?
Just now we are preparing MSCS data and labor force survey data. So just now we have no question for presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. May I check also to Myanmar? So on the data, do you already have some variables selected?
Regarding the labor force survey, we have no three variable. We have no data, so that's why we have prepared poverty data from MSCS. And so
Okay.
I requested to DG. So
Okay.
yeah, if I got his permission, so we will prepare poverty data.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Myanmar, for the updates. May I check also with colleagues from Vietnam and Cambodia, please? Any updates on your data preparation for the exercise? Because in the last session, I think in early December, we will have exercise using your own data. For tomorrow, we will have exercise as mentioned by Miss Dish, but no, we will use, I think Miss Dish will prepare some dummy data, right? To be used for the exercise.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Yeah. But on the last session of this training series, we will do exercise using your own data. Why we need this? Because later on, you will try to implement the small area estimation on your own data, right? So if you have issues, then our experts from Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia can provide any assistance to you. That's why the data preparation, I think, is crucial, including the selection of the variables. So if you need any assistance inputs on the selection of the variables to be used, let us know. Not only during this session, after this session, if you need any assistance, you can email to us to Asensta any input that you might need or any question that you may have. Okay, back to Cambodia and Vietnam. May we hear from Cambodia and Vietnam for the data preparation? Any data that you already try to collect for the exercise? Or from other countries as well? And we have Malaysia and Timor-Leste also. If you want to update us on your data preparation. Last time we understand that Malaysia mentioned, I think, would like to use the data related to employment. Lao also last time mentioned related to employment. May we hear from Cambodia and Vietnam, please? Okay, since no response, maybe our colleagues not ready yet with the data. Okay, there is updates from Timor-Leste currently trying to prepare data on poverty. Thank you, Mr. Jacob. We noted that you preparing the data on poverty for the exercise. Thank you so much. If you need assistance from our experts, let us know. Or do you need to consult our experts on the variables that you will use for the exercise? Let us know also. Tomorrow, I think we will have a short presentation also from our colleagues from BPS after the exercise and presentation from Philippines. Our colleagues from BPS will also show you some examples on variable selection. So I think that's all for today. If no more question, tomorrow we will see you again same time at 9 a.m. in the morning. So you may raise also question tomorrow morning before we start the tomorrow morning session. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice day ahead.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow morning. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.